Chairman, we are live now. Thanks.
Wonderful. I'm going to call to order the May 13th, 2021 Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. I'm not sure if it's Margaret or Deb who will call the roll, but whomever that will be, do you mind doing that, please?
Sure. Thank you. Chairman,
Present.
Councilmember Snyder,
Here.
Chairman McKay,
Here.
Chair Wheeler,
Here.
Board Member Crystal,
Here.
Mayor Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Davis Younger.
It says she has a conflict and she may be joining us a little bit late.
Sure. Thank you. Mayor Rochelle,
Here.
Mayor Maya,
Here.
Senator Boysko,
Here.
Delegate Watts,
Here.
Delegates Rowe,
Here.
Ms. Hines,
Here.
Mr. Cole,
Here.
Ms. Sinna,
Here.
Mr. Horsley.
Here.
Great. Chairman, we have a quorum. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you call Mayor Burke's name?
Yes, please.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, there we go. So with the exception of Miss Davis Younger, I believe everybody was here today. That's great. I'm going to start with the motion to adopt the resolution to conduct an electronic meeting. Hopefully this will be the last time we have to adopt this motion, because after this, maybe we'll actually be back in person. I'm going to make a motion to adopt a resolution 2021-05 to conduct the electronic meeting via electronic communications during the governor's declared state of emergency during the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by, I think I heard Jeff's voice, so I'm going to say seconded by Chairman McKay. Discussion on the motion? All right. If anyone disagrees with that motion, please say aye. Hearing none, that motion will pass 13-01 with Ms. Younger not being in the meeting at this time. We next have to approve the meeting minutes, and I will say that we found the mistake in the GPC meeting, that the meeting minutes are not from the meeting of, oh no, this is right. It is from the meeting of April 8th, not from April 11th. This is meeting April 8th. So if everyone has looked over their meeting minutes, does anyone make any changes, corrections, additions, or deletions to the meeting minutes from April 8th? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Wilson. Is that who that was? And is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Boysko. I'm really getting good with you guys' voices. I tell you. All right. Discussion on that motion? Does anyone disagree with this motion? Please say aye. Then that motion will also pass 13-01. We have a presentation today. It's Transportation Technology Strategic Plan in Action. And it is Mr. Jasper and Council Member Snyder, who was, and Ms. McKenzie, who are going to conduct that presentation. So take it over, please.
Sure. So thanks a lot, Chair Randall. Thanks to Monica Bachman's foresight, this special group was recommended and then created for NVTA to really take a detailed look at technology. What can it do? What can it do? But most importantly, what do we want it to do as a region? And the group that was put together, again, under Monica Bachman's excellent leadership, included elected officials, Mayor Rieschel, myself, John Faust, Jim Kolb, and it included technology companies and included nonprofits. So it was really a unique group of both public and private sector worked on this issue on behalf of NVTA. And one of the first things that we needed to get straight is, well, what goals do we really want it to serve? And of course, we wanted them to be consistent with the mission of NVTA, but the major goals that we wanted to serve were equity, safety, and sustainability, and we'll hear more about that from NVTA staff in a minute. What the report in essence and the work does is to establish tools for NVTA and the region to use to conduct regional analysis of technology, regional coordination of planning, and regional implementation of technology in a way that maximizes our transportation system service to the people that we serve. So with that, I'll turn it over to our two planners who were absolutely critical to moving this forward, if that's all right with you, Madam Chair.
It is, and what I'll do afterwards is I'll just go down the row and ask for questions because I can't see everybody on the screen and I may not know your voice. And so after the presentation, I'll just go down and ask everybody one by one if they have questions. That's how I'll do that.
Thank you. Okay, Keith.
Thank you very much, Chair Randall, Councilmember Snyder. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak this evening on the Transportation Technology Strategic Plan. I'd like to add my thanks to all the members of the Transportation Technology Committee, without whom this would not have been possible, and they've helped us over a 2-year period. I'd also like to acknowledge the committees that have helped us over the last couple of months as well. The topics I'm going to quickly cover this evening on the screen here, and Miss Love is going to help me in the middle explaining how we can use the TTSP, as we'll call it, the Transportation Technology Strategic Plan. Margaret, if you could advance to the next slide, please. So why did we develop this plan in the first place? And I just kind of actually. Margaret, if you just click it down one little bit further, what you see here is a timeline reading from, oops, no, go back to the previous slide. Yeah, okay, that's great, thanks. You see a timeline from top to bottom. On the right-hand side, this is essentially the timeline of MBTA created in 2002. And since then, we've gone through multiple rounds of updating transaction, the long-range plan. And since July 2013, you've had 5 funding programs on the cusp of your 6th funding program. So by any measure, that's a fantastic achievement for the authority over this time period. But if you look to the left of this graphic, you see the timeline, in this case, using the Apple iPhone as an example of how starting from scratch in 2004, iPhone has reached Apple has reached iPhone 12 in a relatively short period of time, and so what you see here is an example of what we sometimes refer to as Moore's law, whereby technology capacity and capability pretty much doubles every year or so, and over that same time period it halves in price, which just leads to this absolute exponential growth in technology. And using Apple and the iPhone as an example in this graphic, but just in case you needed any additional backup to why we needed to do the TTSP, let me walk you through some other things that have happened since 2004, which coincidentally was the last time we saw the cicadas. So this new round of cicadas will not have known about Facebook in 2004. It was available, but only to members of Ivy League schools at that time. In 2005, YouTube came on the scene. In 2006, it was followed by Twitter. So I guess at that stage, social media as we know it today had pretty much been established. I'm going to mention a couple of companies, big tech companies who you don't necessarily immediately associate with transportation, but they're in the mix for sure. So in 2005, Amazon Prime made its debut. And in 2006, a couple of notable international dictionaries incorporated the verb Google to mean to conduct a search on the internet for something. In 2007, Amazon set the reading world on fire by introducing the Kindle. And in 2009, not to be outdone, Google started quietly developing and testing its self-driving car. In 2010, using blockchain technology, the first Bitcoin transaction took place. It was a transaction between someone in Florida and someone in London who purchased, using Bitcoin, a couple of pizzas with the equivalent value of, at that time, of $25. The actual Bitcoin transaction involved 10,000 Bitcoin. I would like to have had a slice of that because that's worth a lot more now than it was in 2010 when that transaction took place. Also in 2010, SpaceX had its first manned flight of the Dragon craft, and more down to earth perhaps, Arlington County and the district Department of Transportation introduced capital bike share. In 2013, a company by the name of Zoom launched a webinar application, which at that time was limited to a maximum of 25 participants, but Zoom hasn't done too badly over the intervening years. In 2014, Amazon introduced us to Alexa, and the Commonwealth of Virginia reached agreement with what we know as transportation network companies, or more commonly known as Uber and Lyft, for those companies to operate on a regulatory sound basis in Virginia. In 2018, Amazon HQ selected Northern Virginia and New York for its locations of HQ2, and I mention that because when you look at the technology that surrounds HQ1 in Seattle, you have to anticipate that Amazon's going to be doing some pretty impressive things in this area in the not too distant future. In 2019, the first commercial drone delivery took place in the US. It took place in Christiansburg in Virginia. And in 2020, Amazon ordered 100,000 electric vehicles for their expanding delivery service. The Virgin Hyperloop had its first trial, which included carrying people. And also in 2020, perhaps on a less grand scale, but no less significant for this region, we saw the first on-street pilot test of a self-driving transit shuttle not too far away from the MBTA office in the Mosaic district. So when you look back to where the cicadas were when they last appeared, and see what has happened, all these things, my wife said to me, gracious, all these things are household names. What on earth is going to happen by the time we see the cicadas again? And that really is the point of doing the TTSP, is what exactly is coming that we need to be proactively preparing for. And just to give you a taste of some of what we know is coming, pretty much every auto manufacturer has announced by what year they will only be selling electric vehicles. And so, for example, we see Toyota in 2040, General Motors in 2035, Volvo in 2030, Ford, but only in Europe, 2026, and Volkswagen 2026. Not to be outdone, a number of states have indicated that it's their goal that you will not be able to buy an internal combustion engine powered vehicle. So California has set a goal of 2035 for that milestone, and New Jersey and Massachusetts, I believe, have followed. Not to be outdone, the state of Washington has said, we can go one better than that. Actually, we're going to go five better than that. So in 2030, you will not be able to buy anything other than an electric vehicle in Washington state. Some little conditions associated with that, but nonetheless, that's their goal. Virginia, not set such a goal, but certainly has indicated a big push in the same direction from the last General Assembly session. So these things are coming. The Transportation Technology Plan, Strategic Plan, helps us to prepare for this. And Margaret, if you could move to the next slide quickly, please. what exactly is the TTSP? It's think of it as a tool that enables us to have a proactive approach to the adoption of transportation technology, so that we don't have to react when the technology arrives, but we can anticipate when it will arrive and what we need to do to be ready. The TTSP provides a rational, consistent approach that identifies how technologies support the region's vision. This is really, really important for us, because technology, as exciting as shiny new objects are, technology has to help the authority achieve its vision. We're not looking to kind of figure out what we can do with this piece of technology or that piece of technology. It has to be the other way around. The technology committee drilled that into us from the get-go. The TTSP includes 8 strategies, which we'll be asking for you to take action on this evening. And for each strategy, there are up to 9 possible MBTA roles that might be associated with them. The TTSP is a large and living document that will be updated as technologies evolve, and we're not asking you, I repeat, we're not asking you to take action on the TTSP document itself. It does, however, include an action plan, and we are looking for action related to that action plan, which really helps us to get going with this initiative to kind of have a big picture of what we want to accomplish, but to start immediately in fairly measured steps and to build momentum over time. Next slide, please, Margaret. These are the 8 strategies that are obviously in your packet. I'm not going to go through them individually, but just to help beyond the title of the strategy, on the right side of this table, you kind of get an idea of what our intent is for each of these strategies. I would say that a number of committee members have suggested additional strategies on the way, and these were very thoughtful suggestions. But we've taken the view that the suggested additions are already addressed by one or more of these 8 strategies, and we also didn't want to overstretch ourselves by having too many strategies, and we certainly didn't want to reinvent new wheels by taking on board initiatives that are already mature and happening in the region and led by others. So we definitely have identified what they are in the TTSP, but we did not want to encroach on things that were already active. Next slide, please. Some of the benefits, the expected benefits of the TTSP are listed here. But again, really, I can't emphasize enough just how important it is that if we do this right, we'll be looking, using your vision to leverage these transportation technologies in a way that helps the region, helps people travel around the region through various means. And equally, if we do see technologies which gives us pause and perhaps is not going to work very well for us, then we have a bit of time to try and mitigate the worst impacts. I won't go through each of these benefits. You can see they cover a broad range of things, but we think there are so many reasons why we would like the authority to kind of give us the go ahead to start working on this. Next slide, please, Margaret. It is important to remember that the TTSP fits extremely well with the authority's 2 primary responsibilities, which in the top box are listed as the long-range transportation plan, transaction, and your 6-year programming. And those 2 things obviously are connected with one another as well. So starting with the vision, both the transaction and the TTSP are driven by the same vision. They're completely in lockstep with one another. That's been our approach going into this, and Councilmember Snyder did mention the core values of safety, equity, and sustainability, and they are enshrined within that vision statement. Next slide, please. And just to pick up again on those core values are listed here, just a little bit more explanation of what they are, and our approach to all of this, which Ms. Love will just walk you through with a few examples in just a moment. Our approach with all of this is to look at technologies through the lens of how well they support the vision and the core values. And then based on that evaluation, we'll come up with some ratings which will help us decide what the appropriate action should be and how that ties into the strategies that we're asking you to take action on. Next slide, please. So how will we use the TTSP? Ms. Love's going to walk you through this, but essentially what we've done is we've come up with 2 examples using very similar technologies that will potentially have very widely different effects on the region, and Ms. Love will use these 2 technologies to give you an example of the way the rating system could work. At this stage, she's going to present it in a fairly high-level way, just for simplicity and time. Certainly, it'll be refined as we go. But at this stage, if Margaret, you could advance the slide, and Ms. Love, if you could take over.
Great, thank you, Keith and Margaret. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. As Keith said, I will walk you through 2 examples of how the TTSP could be used to evaluate technologies as they enter our region. Again, the 2 technologies that we'll discuss are similar to one another, and one of them actually has a real-world application in our region that you'll see on your screen now. But there are a few key differences that show how the TTSP can accommodate nuance in these technologies. And how we can use it as a tool to embrace the technologies moving forward. I want to note again that these evaluations you'll see today are illustrative only and at a very high level. It does not mean that these are the verdicts on any particular technology necessarily. I will walk through both of them quickly, and then I'll pause to see if you have any questions about them, if that's okay with the chair, but I'll defer to her when we get to that place. Great. So the first technology I want to speak to you about is the electric and autonomous transit shuttle. And you'll see the example of the relay shuttle in Merrifield, which is right outside the NVTA offices. You'll see first here, we talk about a few features of the technology type, such as it can operate in inclement weather and mixed traffic. And then some assumptions we've made for the sake of today's examples that we would assume have happened by the time we do this type of analysis. For example, that there has been a public acceptance of the technology. Margaret, if you could move this same slide down just a little bit, please. I'll talk about perfect. You could go back up once more. Thank you. We've got quite a lot of information on these slides. We wanted to give you as much as we could in background. So I want to walk you through the ratings key that you'll be seeing on the next page. It goes from red to green. And red down at the bottom there indicates that we think intervention might be needed. And that does not mean that the technology, that there should be any barriers to adopting the technology, just that they might need to put a little bit more action into what we do to adapt to it so that we maximize the benefits and minimize any potential negatives. The yellow rating indicates that caution might be needed in this particular technology. And that's just, again, a balancing of any potential positives and negatives so we can get the best for the region. Finally, you'll see the green rating there, which would indicate the TTSP might recommend embracing the technology. I want to say that does not mean there would be no actions we needed to take, just that we think that there are more benefits for this technology than potential negatives that need to be mitigated. With that, Margaret, if you could take us to the next slide, please. So we'll go a little bit more in depth on this same electric and autonomous shuttles. You'll see first we hold up the NVTA vision statement and see how the technology addresses it or incorporates it. And next we look at the core values that Keith spoke of, which are equity, sustainability, and safety, and see how each of those, how we can use each of those as a lens to evaluate the technology. I'll give you an example here using the equity core value. in the case of electric and autonomous shuttles, we think that they might have a good impact on equity and thus give them a rating of green or embrace. And an example you'll see in the description column in the middle of your screen as to why it got that rating is that these shuttles might improve first last mile connections or reduce congestion and provide more reliable transit times. In the next column to the right, you'll see a series of actions the TTSP might recommend based on that rating and description, such as conducting public outreach and education initiatives to let people know about the potential benefits of the technology and hopefully encourage adoption of it. Beneath the exploration of the core values, you'll see a list of the strategies here on the left-hand side of your screen, numbered 1 through 8, and those correspond to the key that we've given the 8 strategies in the TTSP. It does not mean that they're in any chronological or priority order, just a handy reference note for all of us. And you'll see check marks beside some of them. This means that the TTSP strategy numbered there might be applicable to this technology. And to the right, you'll see a column that lists potential sub-actions. These are actions recommended by the 8 strategies. And the reason they are not mapped individually to one of the strategies is that some of those strategies recommend the same types of actions, and we wanted to show you a synergistic approach about how all of these things can work in tandem across the entire plan. An example of an action that might be recommended by one or more of the applicable strategies in the case of electric and autonomous shuttles is advocating for Commonwealth policies that contribute to or support the creation of a network of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, or increasing consideration of EV or electric vehicle or autonomous vehicle shuttles in transaction or the 6-year program project selection process. I'd like to go ahead and take you to the next example. Margaret, if you could take us to the next screen, you'll see how these 2 similar technologies differ a little bit. In this case, we'll be looking at personal electric and autonomous vehicles. So these are privately owned cars. And in this case, we'll be exploring those vehicles that are level 5 or of autonomy, which means that they can operate without human intervention in all contexts and weather scenarios. And we'll make a few assumptions again, just as we did last time, such as that these vehicles are nearing the price point to enter the public market. We'll use the same ratings again from red to green. And Margaret, if you could go ahead and take us to the next slide, we'll go a little bit more into detail with these. First, we'll look at the vision statement again, because that's so important to the work of NVTA. And you'll see here that this technology receives a rating of yellow. Exploring further into the core values, we get to see how that rating was derived. For example, you'll see in the case of equity, the first red rating. And again, that doesn't mean that there should be any resistance to the technology, just that a little bit more work might be needed to minimize those negatives and maximize the benefits. The description here gives you an example of what some of those, the reason behind that red rating might be. For example, when these personal electric and autonomous vehicles first hit the public marketplace, they might be expensive and thus prohibitive for individuals to purchase and might create some inequities in that regard. To deal with things like that, this table shows you some potentially recommended actions, such as developing white papers to analyze feedback that we receive about this technology and work in the field, including research, to identify best practices for how we can accommodate this mode in a manner that is most consistent with the NVTA core values of equity, sustainability, and safety. Again, at the bottom, you'll see we look through each of the 8 strategies and see which are most applicable. And in this case, I believe they all are, yes. And we'll recommend a few sub-actions there. I'll just give you a quick example. We might develop policies that discourage zero occupancy vehicle mild travel. So any autonomous vehicle without a person in it. I know that that was a lot of information about these examples. Just want to highlight again that they are high level and illustrative only, but I would like to pause and see if the chair would like to entertain any questions about how we apply this methodology.
So what I think I'll do, if that's the end of the presentation altogether, I think I just might go down the line and ask, does anyone have any questions about any of it? That was pretty fascinating though, to be honest. That was really interesting. So let's just go down the line and I'll start with Chairman McKay.
Questions? I'm good.
Chair Wheeler,
No, I've seen this before, and so I know so much work went into it. I think it's great. No
Member
questions.
Crystal,
Thanks. I really appreciate the presentation. I'll be super brief. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate it and to give a specific example of why. I think all of us, when e-scooters started showing up on the road, sort of a funny example compared to something as transformative as electric vehicles, but I think, or autonomous vehicles, I think a lot of us experienced them really quickly in big waves, and we're kind of back on our heels trying to figure out how to respond to this emerging technology. And one of the things that we had to develop really quickly was just a framework for evaluating whether we thought this was a good or bad thing to have in our community and how we wanted to regulate to mitigate the bad and maximize the good. And so the fact that the team here has already put in the effort to create that kind of framework that we can apply to all of the rapidly changing technologies, especially autonomous vehicles that are surely going to be coming to our roads and streets in the next decade, maybe sooner, is so valuable. So thank you. I'm looking forward to putting this into practice.
thank you. Mayor Wilson,
Sorry, nothing else.
Mayor Rischel,
No questions. Thanks.
Mayor Meyer,
No questions. Thank you.
Senator Boysko,
No questions, just really appreciate the presentation and the thoughtfulness that went into it.
Delegate Watts.
A comment, unfortunately. I love the presentation as far as its comprehensive vision, but we've got to keep anchored with the fact that the NVTA was formed partly because of a long neglect, and its mission is to reduce congestion and improve mobility. So we need to be both in the planning as well as in the allocation of funds. So we need to be careful in going forward, focusing on all of these other goals, that they are always secondary to the NVTA's formation and requirements in state statute.
Thank you, ma'am. Delegate Rome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one comment.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So just on the strategies part, especially where it says advocate for Commonwealth policies that contribute to support creation of a network of EV charging infrastructure. That sort of thing that seems very ripe for a PPP, a public-private partnership in this case. Because, like, say, for example, in the town of Haymarket, we actually have those EV stations, as I know is becoming more popular throughout Northern Virginia, over at one of the sheet stations, but not all the sheets in the area or in my district actually include them. So this is the sort of thing where we could probably partner with a lot of the local gas stations that actually have the available space in order to be able to do it. So it's just an idea in terms of outreach, because I've seen that model work pretty successfully in different parts of our region.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is terrific work, and I take everybody's cautions to heart. I do wonder, looking at this plan, whether any parts of it might be fundable by NVTA. It's just a question. Keeping in mind Delegate Watts's caution about what we're created to do. I do know that the Transportation Research Board has a fund through the CTB where things can be piloted and tested to see if they have applicability. I just wonder whether there's any small amount of money that we might set aside to test things here in Northern Virginia too. And again, a great deal of deference to the reason why we're formed. So.
Thank you. Mr. Cope?
No, just a comment. Just want to thank Keith and Mackenzie for the great work that they did in working with this group, as well as all the people who participated in it. And then just echoing what Councilman Snyder said about Monica and her foresight, for putting this group together and trying to overlay this on our planning and decision-making process. So it's really helpful, and also to Councilman Snyder for the great work he did in sharing the group and keeping us on task and moving forward. So just thank you and appreciate the work that went into this.
Thank you. Mayor Burke. She was I thought she was here. Was she not here? Okay, I guess Ms. Burke's not here, which changes my voting numbers. Ms. Sinner,
No questions, thank you. Great presentation, though.
Mr. Horsley,
No, great presentation. Agreed. No questions.
and before I go to Councilman Snyder, I would say that that was fascinating. That was fascinating. I was really surprised by the dates of which states and jurisdictions are talking about not having combustible engines. I mean, it is becoming the Jetsons for real around here. It really is. It's fascinating. To Delegate Watts's point, I would wonder, and I think it was Delegate Watts and Ms. Hines, I wonder if, and this, we have to look into this, if funding could be used for more connectivity. I mean, for instance, we do fund sidewalks because the sidewalks are taking someone to a metro station. So you have to have the sidewalk connectivity for that reason. So if this type of technology could be used to move people to a larger transit a transit option, maybe something like that could be considered. But I do think that, as fascinating as this is, I do think that what the Delegate Watts said should be heeded, and whatever we do, we should look at things from the lens of what is the reason that the NVTA exists. So, yeah. All right, so there is no action on this item. Mr. Snyder, do you want to have any closing words on this item?
I do, Madam Chair. I think that the action items on the 8 strategies is perhaps the next thing on the agenda.
Okay. Well, when we get there, I will definitely let you make those motions. Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I could, I just wanted to note to Delegate Watts and Ms. Hines' point, we hear you loud and clear, and this is why the committee was comprised of people from the private sector, the industry, the Commonwealth at large, because we noted early on that there are limitations regarding what the authority can fund under our statute, if you will. I will note that we even had Vdot on, who's saying, hey, the representative from Vdot would like to share this with the Commonwealth. But on the flip side, there are some technology projects that we have currently funded that are in transaction, and they do meet our goals and our statute charge to reduce congestion. So we understand that while there are limitations, and I've told the committee this on numerous occasions, this is why we have a committee, because the authority, we cannot do all of the not advocacy, but the implementation for this. But we hope that the other committee members in their various roles, even the localities and the agencies and the private sector, could also support and try to do some of the implementation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the action item then. And Mr. Snyder, how do you want to do this? You want to take them one by one? How would you like to do this, sir?
Madam Chair, I would move the NVTA adopt the 8 strategies. And I think if you could bring up the slide with the 8 strategies listed, because I think they're very responsive to the comment that Delegate Watts made a minute ago. Reduce congestion and increase throughput is one of the 8 strategies. So I just wanted to indicate that the strategies are consistent with our legal obligation as well as the vision of NVTA. So thank you. So I would move approval of that, of the paid strategies.
Second from Rishel.
Okay, so that motion has been made and seconded by Ms. Rishel. And discussion on the motion, I'll go down the line for discussion on the motion. Mr. McKay,
Discussion.
Ms. Wheeler,
None here.
Ms. Crystal,
No discussion.
Mr. Wilson,
No discussion.
Ms. Rishel.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you. I just want to say, no question, but I just want to say that I have really enjoyed participating in the TTC. And I originally had two reasons for participating. First, I had a concern for equity. And of course, that's one of the core values. Just as technology has the potential to widen the divide in our communities, so I also had concerns about the effect of technology on a transportation divide. My second reason was my interest in the intersection of technology and safety, and of course, our need to be very vigilant in that regard. So I will say it's been a pleasure to work with all the members of the TTC and the NVTA staff who are absolutely indispensable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer,
No comments. Thank you.
Ms. Boysko,
No comments, thank you.
Ms. Watts, Delegate Watts.
Forgive me, I was unmuted. I have to register though, when I look at the specifics under the 8 strategies, the emphasis on electric vehicles and automated vehicles, and I've worked particularly hard on the infrastructure needs to support EVs, that as desirable as this is, the Transportation Planning Board under air quality is where those strategies reside as far as reducing greenhouse gases, much more so than, again, while the mission statement adopted by NVTA as far as safety and equitability is, it, however, does not take the place of reducing congestion and improving regional mobility. And EV really has to go into that silo, while also then under that addressing the mission adopted by NVTA regarding equity, excuse me, and air quality and those issues.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Roan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would just mention on this that in regards to what Delegate Watts was just talking about there, I'm comfortable voting for adoption as long as it does not have a contingency in terms of it having to commit money from the MBTA. Because I very much do want to see how Delegate Watts' concerns are more or less addressed and played out. So if we are just dealing with the broad policy idea for the purpose of having our 3 legislative members being able to have some guidance, for work we can do in the General Assembly, having our localities being able to be forward thinking on this, and even our CTV rep, being informed on this, I have no problem or opposition to that, as long as it's not committing NVTA resources to it beyond just time and staff.
So the motion that we have on the table right now does not commit resources to it.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Ms. Hines.
No questions, Madam Chair.
Mr. Cope.
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Sinner.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Horsley.
No questions. Thanks.
And Mr. Snyder, do you have any closing remarks as the maker of the motion?
I don't. Just thanks a lot for all the work. And yes, we will act consistent with Delegate Watts and Delegate Roan. Thank you.
All right. If you have an objection to the motion, please say aye. Hearing none. Okay, I don't think I heard any. Hearing none, that motion will pass, 13-0. 13-01. 13-01. I'm sorry, 12-02, because we have two members who are missing, who are not here. Ms. Burke is not on with us. Ms. Younger is still not on with us, so that would be 12-01, 12-02. So, thank you. All right, we're gonna go to item number 7, the approval of reallocation of regional surface transportation program funds for Prince William County. Ms. Blackman, would you like to say anything about this item?
Madam Chair, I just note that Prince William is requesting the transfer of $200,000 in RSTP funds from their Route 28 Phase 1 project to the Gemini Way Pedestrian Improvement Project because Route 28 is fully funded. So this $200,000 will actually help some cost overruns for the Gemini Way Pedestrian Improvement Project.
All right.
And I say fully funded it, I should say completed.
Yeah, I have a feeling Miss Wheeler will make the motion, and Miss Rome will second the motion. But let me ask, is there a maker of the motion?
I would gladly make the motion. Yes, Madam Chair.
Is there a second to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Rome.
Okay, seconded by Delegate Rome. Discussion on the motion. Miss Wheeler, do you have anything?
No, just to point out though, this is a sidewalk that connects to a commuter lot, so it is actually congested related because it's filling out a project that is doing mobility and bringing people to the commuter lot. You know, it's an excellent project, and we're grateful for the transfer of the dollars.
Wonderful. Ms. Rome, do you have anything?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. And thank you both to you and to Director Bachman for both taking my calls about this one earlier. So, I mean, I completely support the allocation. I just want to have some points of clarification just to talk about like what this actually does here. So just to the first part is we are not defunding anything on Route 28. This particular phase of Route 28 came in under budget, which we very much want to encourage. And because of that, we had this residual money. But this particular phase, there's 3 phases of this part of the Route 28 project between Pennsylvania Avenue and Fitzwater Drive. This particular one happens to have federal dollars and federal, strings attached to it, which means that for us to transfer money, it was in the county's best interest in this case to transfer to another project that is also federally funded with those federal strings. This Gemini Way Pedestrian Improvement Project happens to be one of those things. And the reason that's important is that with federal funded projects, there typically tends to be a higher cost threshold that's associated with it compared to if we were to just do it ourselves, for example. And that 200,000 can also help offset some of that additional cost. Now, the other tie-in with this is that and I'll be speaking about this much more later, but Gemini Way is actually where OmniRide, we have bus service from OmniRide from there up to the Pentagon. That's actually currently OmniRide's most successful bus line of this year right now, in terms of usage. And so we want to make sure that we have as much accommodation for people to safely be able to get there as possible in the most efficient manner possible. And this is the sort of thing that will allow people to basically access mass transit at a time where mass transit has been really hurting, especially in the greater Prince William area. So I'm happy to support this. And I drove along 28 between Pennsylvania Avenue and Fitzwater Drive today. It's about 3.1 miles total. And you can see that in most of it between Linton Hall and Fitzwater, it looks great. It's 2 lanes up and down, and it's multimodal. There's a 8-foot wide mixed use pass that runs on the, along the northbound side of the road. You are seeing that construction happening right now on the Bristow to Manassas leg, more or less between Linton Hall and Pennsylvania Avenue near the airport. So that project that's going well, but that does not have federal dollars attached to it, which is why we couldn't just transfer that residual fund from phase 1 to completing the rest of that project. So I hope that clears up any issues that other people may have had. And with that, I'm happy to turn it back over.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to make any comments on this motion? Wonderful. Does anyone, so the motion was made by Ms. Chair Wheeler and seconded by Delegate Rome. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Wonderful. That motion will pass unanimously. Thank you. All right, to the next item, the approval of reallocation of congestion mitigation and air quality program funds for Vdot.
Chair Randall, I will note, without reading the specifics on the project transfers, VDOT has some donor projects which are complete, and these projects have some leftover funds on them. So they would like to have these funds, the CMAQ monies, transferred to the recipient projects because these recipient projects do need additional funds. I will note that the recipient project is the Northern Virginia Transportation Emissions Reductions Measures Project. So we are, as staff, fully supportive of that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Would anyone like to make this motion? No?
So moved.
That's I just figured that somebody's particularly wanted to make the motion. I'm surprised she didn't jump at it.
I'd be happy to second it, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, the motion was moved by Senator Boysko and seconded by Ms. Crystal. Discussion on the motion. If anyone has anything they'd like to say in the motion, please go on and speak up now, because it's a fairly straightforward issue, though. This is not complicated at all. It's not even that much money, to be honest, for the amount of money we work with. Okay, wonderful. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Then that motion will pass unanimously. Wonderful. And we are getting right through it, and we are now on item number 9. The new appointment of the acting county attorney for Arlington County. I do not want to say your name incorrectly, so Monica, can you pronounce the names I say it correctly?
And Board Member Crystal, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Minchow Core.
Actually, how about I just go to Board Member Crystal for a motion?
I'd be so pleased to make this motion, and if you'll indulge me, Madam Chair, if I have a second, I would like to just speak to it briefly, which is that we appoint, or rather approve the appointment of Minchow Core as the acting county attorney for Arlington County to the NVTA Council of Councils.
Thank you.
Seconded, David Meyer.
Motion was made and seconded by Mr. Meyer. Would you like to have any other discussion on the motion, Ms. Crystal?
Well, I would love to just take an occasion to recognize what has prompted this appointment, which is, as you all saw, as was shared by Ms. Backman, Steve McIsaac will be transitioning not away from serving transportation in the region, but away from his role in Arlington County, and with it, his role on the Council of Councils. Mr. McIsaac, I hope, has joined us at least briefly for at least this conversation tonight. Otherwise, we'll share the video. Has spent 21 years with Arlington County as our county attorney, and has been involved with the NVTA since its inception. He helped form the Council of Councils. We all know him, I think, as authority members, as a voice to walk us through the complications of the many legal challenges and technicalities of the 2007 Transportation Funding Bill, 2313, of course, the creation of the authority itself back in 2002, and really everything in between. So I'm wearing solely my authority member hat. I will not submit anyone, least of all Mr. McIsaac, to my many emotions about losing him to Arlington County, but I didn't want the moment to go unrecognized, since Mr. McIsaac has really given very generously of his time, legal expertise, and passion for the issues of transportation in the region to the authority. So
He has, he absolutely has. So thank you for the motion and the second on the motion. Would anyone else like to discuss a discussion on this motion? Wonderful. Is anybody opposed to the motion? That motion will pass unanimously. Wonderful. So we're going to go into the discussion items. The first thing was the Governance Personnel Committee report. I will give that. It was a fairly short meeting, and it was a bit of an interesting meeting about the assessment and evaluation of Ms. Backman. Now, we found out, and Mr. Lonke, you can walk me through this. So all these years, we've been calling Monica the wrong thing. And that the code requires her to be called one thing, her position, and we've been referring to her as something else. And so we're going to first go into the bylaws and change formally what what her formal title is. And Mr. Longi, can you say what it is and what it's supposed to be?
Certainly, Chair Randall. The Code of Virginia stipulates that the authority will have one particular position, which is a chief executive officer. That position in our bylaws has always been referred to as an executive director. So with the approval of the GPC earlier today, we will start a 2-month read, bringing forward to the authority, changing the bylaws where it says executive director to chief executive officer. That will need to be read in June and July, and the authority can then take action at their July meeting to make that
Thank you,
change.
sir. I guess we've been, breaking some kind of Virginia code all this time, calling Monica the wrong thing. So we will fix that. For the purpose of the Monica's evaluation and assessment, what will happen is that Ms. Backman will send out her self-assessment, the things that she was going to be working on, and how she believes she has been achieving those goals over the past year. When that comes out, what will also happen at the same time, that you will have a chance to read that and then comment back and send your comments back to Mr. Longi by March 30th. Any comments you'd like to say about Ms. Backman. Now, the other thing that we talked about today is that, as we have a whole discussion about compensation for these types of positions and a compensation review, which was discussed last year. I think it was Ms. Crystal that asked for that last year. One of the things that was said and that I agree with is that, since 2313 went into effect and since MBTA has been funded, we may want to take a look and see if Monica's job description, Ms. Backman's job description, as it has been written, is still appropriate in effect. Is there something less she's doing, something more she's doing, something very different that she's doing than the description of what that job was? So along with the looking at the compensation review, we're going to take a look at whether she thinks and whether we believe that her job description is up to date for what she is doing. And so we talked about doing all those things at one time. We're going to have a consolidated meeting in June for the full body to consider the comments from the body regarding Ms. Backman's evaluation. I don't think it makes much sense for the GPC to have a meeting and then have the same meeting 5 minutes later with the full authority. So we'll just do it one time in the full authority, and we'll do that in June, and then probably in July decide on compensation changes. For the GPC members, did I miss anything? Did I get everything?
Chair Randall, if I may, the request for the authority members' assessments of Ms. Backman's goals would be May 30th.
Yep, by May 30th, yep. The thing is, Katie, you're always the one in the center of my screen, so I'm always staring at you when I'm talking. So whenever you change your face at all, I'm because you're the one in the center of my screen all the time.
So I
don't
clean
know
my
why.
glasses and it's like DEFCON 5.
I know you keep taking them on. So I'm like, when I have these meetings, I'm pretty much talking to you the entire time because you're the one.
Well, and I hope you enjoyed the guest of presence for my 2-year-old for a good.
I saw
half hour
that,
speaking.
and I've also been following Jennifer Boysko's cat that thinks it's a dog. I've been following all this stuff tonight. So yeah. So that was the report from the GPC. Do any GPC members have anything they want to add to that? I think I covered it all. Okay, wonderful. Mr. Wilson, do you have anything from the Planning and the Programming Committee?
No, we did obviously hear the presentation that you just heard from Mr. Jasper, and they did a much better job for us than they did for all of you. So just to let you know, so he did an awesome job for us. So
wonderful.
But it was a great presentation and a great plan.
Okay, and I think we've pretty much received the whole thing on technical advisory. So I don't think we have anything else to say on that. Correct? Okay. Ms. Backman, do you have anything from the Executive Director's report?
Well, I would just like to know one thing, Madam Chair, and it's not in my report, but the region will receive some CRISA money was part of the, I guess, the stimulus bills. So we will work with the RJAC in the RJAC meeting for this month to try to make the programming recommendations, and then we will come back to the authority at your June meeting with the recommendations that were made. But we do believe we have a strategy identified for the CRISA and the HIP, if you will. It's called the HIP funding. So we have a strategy to move forward, but I did want to note that.
Do you know the amount?
Yes, I do.
If you don't, that's fine. That's fine.
I can find it in my email.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
we will
That's
have
fine.
to do, okay.
Okay,
We
that's fine.
will have to do a transfer because of some of the deadlines that must be followed for the use of the monies, but I can find the information, and I don't know if Ms. Center, sorry, Maria, don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know if you have it right now.
Well, it's in the neighborhood of about $20 million, 20. Mhm.
Okay, all right, I see. Wonderful, wonderful. I don't have any comments. I always feel like I should, but I don't. So if I don't, I don't. I do know that Ms. Rome actually asked to have a moment at the end of the meeting to share something. So Ms. Delegate Rome, I will before we adjourn, I will turn it to you. Just you wanted to talk about the OmniRide service in Haymarket?
Yes, Madam Chair, if you'd like me to speak about that now, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, this is the last thing before we adjourn, so go for it.
Okay, great. So today I spoke for just under an hour with Bob Schneider, who is the executive director of OmniRide, which provides our regional and local bus service for Prince William County. And there's a few things that have basically come up. Of particular concern for the people I represent in the 13th district. In March of 2020, the Haymarket to Roslyn bus line, which came online, I believe it was December 17 of 2018. That became OmniRide's most ridden and most efficient bus line. So it had about 85% capacity. It was doing phenomenally well. It was at the complete top of the class of all the regional buses for OmniRide. And you know, where you're talking about more than 40 people per bus each trip, each of the 4 lines that would leave in the morning. Today, it is now at the bottom of OmniRide's ridership, and we're talking about 12 riders per day grand total, and that's like 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. So between the 4 buses, we're averaging about 1.5 people per ride, and that means sometimes we are having bus service with no one actually riding it. And then what happens in that case is that the bus driver, rather than go to Roslyn and back, will literally just stay in the parking lot until the next bus comes around. And so that's clearly an issue. And so one of the things that Mr. Snyder told me is that beginning on June 7th, they're going to reduce service from 4 lines in the morning and 4 lines in the evening to 2 and 2. He'll be sending over that schedule change. And obviously for our friends in Arlington, board member Crystal, this affects your constituents as well. You know, just based on the paths where it stops. It starts basically near 5 different metro stations between Ballston and Roslyn. So the sunny side here is that we believe that ridership should start picking back up sometime after 4th of July. And the reasons that we are having a significant drop in ridership in Western Prince William, especially where the 3 Western Prince William lines, the Gainesville to Pentagon, Manassas, Portsmouth to Pentagon, actually, well, might be Cushing, and the Haymarket one, there are a number of reasons contributing to their really marked decline of ridership. The first one is that a lot of those riders are actually going to government contractors and private sector more so than just going to the DoD, for example. So those who are riding the bus to the Pentagon from Gainesville, because DoD is calling fully vaccinated people back in, they have a reason to go. But a lot of the private sector folks are not calling people in on a regular. Number 2 is that a lot of companies are now transitioning so that workers can work via email for the first couple hours of their day at like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. And then once traffic kind of levels off a bit, they're now hitting the road at like 10:30. And so that is changing congestion. And when that happens and you have less congestion in the morning, you have less of incentive to ride the bus on HOV because you're not getting that much of a significant change to your own driving schedule. This is also why, for example, the slug lines over in Gainesville have also had a marked decline in terms of their own ridership. And so what's going to happen basically is that with the Haymarket line, they're going to remove to the bus services from June 7th until Labor Day. After Labor Day, they're hoping that if ridership increases, they can add the third bus back. And if people start riding the third bus again, then they can go back to full capacity. But one of the things we need to stress, I really think, is number one, that it is safe to ride OmniRide. It is safe to ride our buses. They sanitize their entire bus, each bus in their fleet every single day. And especially as, you know, we are approaching as a state, we're about 47.5% of our population now has at least partially vaccinated. And by July 4th, we should be, you know, in the 60s, probably pushing 70 percentile. It should be safe for people to go back. But the other issue is when schools have been virtual, a lot more parents are staying home, which
Hey,
means
Mr.
that
Brown,
they're also not taking
I'm
the
gonna
bus.
ask you to kind of wrap it up because I'm not sure
Yeah,
this
sure.
is a full, okay, all right.
So yeah, so the last thing that concerns us on this is that the Eastern Prince William buses are doing better because they have HOT, and so they have an incentive in that case to ride the bus line, whereas in Western Prince William it's HOV, and until you get inside the Beltway, but even then the tolls aren't very expensive right now, so a lot of people are just choosing to drive. All that said, this is basically very much affecting congestion, and it affects commuting, but we're going to have to more or less figure out how do we encourage people to get back on. So number one, local bus service is still free, regional still half priced, and it's just something that people need to know so we can encourage them to safely ride the bus again.
Absolutely, and that goes for all of our buses all around the whole region. They're safe to get back on, as is the metro, So,
Madam
all right,
Chairman?
well,
Madam Chairman, I just would, it's Mary Hines, sorry.
yeah,
Just a quick offer to Delegate Rome that the Department of Rail and Public Transportation did get a federal grant to help do statewide messaging on all of these issues. And I know they're planning to start rolling it out soon. So feel free to check in with them. And I know that MBTC and others are also well on the way to doing that messaging. We're all going to have to sing on the same song.
absolutely,
So.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
Madam Chair, if I can just mention one thing with that.
Yes.
Yeah, so OmniRide is also going to be doing a messaging campaign probably in the summer. They are going to be, while they're going to target Western Prince William as they should, they're also really interested in reaching out to Warrenton and Front Royal, actually, where we've seen past ridership. If we can get those numbers back up to where they were before COVID, you know, we would have a really robust mass transit system, but it's just, you know, it's going to take some time. So people should be prepared to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, true. Well, okay, everyone, like that's the meeting. That's all I got. That's all I got. Everyone, I hope to see you in person and according to the CDC, unmasked in about a month. So have a good night, everybody.